To get away from the stress of everyday life, the Kappa family decides to take a vacation at a beautiful tropical resort. They're welcomed by the resort manager and waitress Madrid, who offers the parents Guy and Priska some exotic drinks. The kids Maddox and Trent go looking for the candy station, and Trent immediately befriends Idlib, the manager's nephew. After leaving their things in their room, the family changes into their swimsuits and goes to the beach. Trent and Idlib play together and like to talk to everyone on the beach to learn about their jobs, getting answers even from a cop like Greg. Later in the evening, Guy and Priska have an argument about Priska's illness and their incoming divorce. They're trying to keep it hidden from the kids to give them one last vacation as a family, but their argument escalates and the kids hear them yell anyway. Trent tries to keep himself distracted by reading a letter from Idlib, which he must decode first because the boys have invented their own code to write to each other. Meanwhile, on a beach nearby, Brendan watches his companion get in the water. The next morning, all the resort visitors come down for breakfast. Charles has come with his wife Crystal, who needs lots of calcium in her food, their child Kara, and his mother Agnes with her dog. The manager approaches the Kappas and tells them about a special beach not many people know about, promising to send a van to pick them up later. Idlib comes by to say hi to Trent, but the manager reminds him he isn't allowed to be there. Suddenly everyone turns around when they hear a noise. It's Patricia, who has fallen because she's having an epileptic seizure. Her husband Jaron is a nurse, but Charles is a doctor and comes to help them anyway. Fortunately, Patricia recovers quickly and apologizes to everyone for ruining breakfast. Moments later, a driver comes to pick up the Kappas and Charles' family. He takes a hidden road that requires him to go through a special gate that says off limits, and he leaves them outside a clearing, explaining he can't come along. The families cross the woods and a very narrow cavern to come out to a beautiful secluded beach. Charles notices Brendan is sitting nearby, and since he's a racist twat, he decides to leave their things as far away as possible. Maddox sees Brendan too and recognizes him as a famous rapper, but Guy forbids her from bothering him on his vacation. The adults relax while the kids play together. Guy and Priska notice that when the children play house with the dolls, their dialogue includes lots of arguments. Then the kids explore the beach as they complain about being constantly hungry, and they come across a large mound of sand that contains lots of abandoned items, including rusted cutlery from the hotel. Priska immediately reminds them not to play with that because it can give them an infection. Moments later, Trent is in the water and notices there are no fish here like on the main beach. Suddenly something hits him from behind and he screams when he realizes it's a body. Guy and Charles bring the body to the shore and Brendan confirms that's his companion, but he swears he doesn't know what happened. She just left to have a swim and never came back. Charles doesn't believe him and wonders why Brendan's nose is bleeding, but Brendan refuses to give any explanations. Trent complains about being hungry again and tells Priska that his swimming suit is too tight, which makes Priska notice something weird. At that moment, Patricia and Jaron also arrive at the beach. Guy realizes this could give them the chance to contact the driver, but the couple confirms he's already left. Agnes suddenly begins complaining about chest pain and Charles rushes to check on her while the others try to use their phones, but there isn't signal here. Jaron goes back into the cavern to see if he can find anyone in the woods, but his head starts hurting badly and he passes out. When he wakes up, he's back on the beach. Priska tries to ask Charles for his help because she thinks there's something wrong with Trent, but Charles is too busy checking on his mother. However, as soon as he turns around, Agnes stops breathing and not even CPR can save her. Charles assumes the stress caused by the body they found gave her a heart attack. Meanwhile, the kids keep hanging out together and they think they somehow look different. They also won't stop eating. They notice some lights on a hill nearby, but the lights quickly disappear. Then they go to chat with Jaron and Patricia, who don't believe them when the kids say their ages. Priska shows up asking where her kids are and Jaron and Patricia think they're being pranked since the kids are right there. It's then revealed that Maddox, Trent, and Kara have suddenly become teenagers. While everyone's busy with these revelations, Brendan runs into the cavern to try to escape. Charles immediately follows him, but both men are affected by the same terrible headache Jaron had and they pass out only to wake up on the beach a second later. An argument ensues on how to proceed and the adults decide to separate in pairs to see if they can find a safe escape route, but the same happens, a headache followed by waking up on the beach. Another argument begins on how to proceed while Charles suddenly takes out a knife from his pocket and uses it to hurt Brendan, saying he thought he was being attacked as an excuse. Jaron tries to check the injury, but to everyone's shock, the cut is already scarred. Brendan swears he doesn't know what's going on and explains he met his companion here in the resort. They bonded because they both took a vacation after being recently diagnosed. Since there are so many sick people in this group, Patricia wonders if this is some kind of group psychosis. At that moment, the group discovers Agnes' dog is also dead. Jaron wonders if they could swim out of here, but there isn't any land in sight, meaning any possible distance may be too dangerous. Patricia gathers the group in a circle and asks them to share their problem to see if the psychosis is caused by the stress. Crystal admits she and Charles have been having trouble because Charles has been under lots of stress at work, which Charles hates to hear. Priska refuses to talk but admits she's feeling weird, and Guy confesses she's got a tumor. Suddenly Priska passes out and Charles checks her abdomen, pointing out the tumor is huge. Guy doesn't understand this since the tumor was supposed to be benign and only 3 centimeters. If they want to save Priska, they'll have to do an improv operation. Charles uses some alcohol and his knife to start, but the first cut immediately closes, so when he tries again Jaron has to keep it open with his hands. They manage to remove the tumor, which has gotten even bigger in the last few seconds, and once again the cut closes on its own. Brendan goes to check on his companion's body for clues and discovers she's already become a skeleton, which usually would take years. Priska also notices Guy has wrinkles, and the group finally realizes that time passes faster on this beach. Based on the kid's new age, they calculate 30 minutes equals a whole year, and they guess nails and hair are dead cells, so they react to whatever this beach is doing differently. This also explains that the kids are eating so much because their mass is growing. If they stay here for a while, they'll all die of old age. In the meantime, Trent and Kara have made a tent with an umbrella and some towels to have privacy as they bond over their fears and get closer. When they come out a moment later, they're looking even older and Kara's 5 months pregnant. As everyone begins arguing again, Kara's belly keeps on growing and her water suddenly breaks. Charles, Jaron, and Patricia help Kara give birth, but this is too much for Crystal to handle and she runs away. She tries to escape through the cavern but she gets the same headache and wakes up on the beach to immediately hear bad news. Since time passes so fast here, the baby only stayed alive for a minute before he died from lack of attention. Trent has a breakdown and his family tries to calm him down. Crystal tries to comfort Kara, but Charles also freaks out and calls his wife out for looking ugly. Hurt, Crystal runs away again, and when Maddox tries to comfort her, Crystal just asks to be left alone. Suddenly Patricia screams and everyone discovers Charles is stabbing Brendan, proving that the sick one in his family is him because he suffers from schizophrenia. He's been hiding it because he would lose his job. They try to stop him, but by the time they reach Brendan's side he's already dead. Afterward Charles leaves to sit alone, and Guy takes the chance to carefully take the knife from him. Then Jaron decides he'll try to swim out of the beach to find help, especially since Patricia needs her medicine. Patricia can't help but notice that even though technically years have been passing for her, she hasn't gone through another seizure since they arrived. Trent considers climbing the high rock wall that surrounds the beach, but Priska forbids it because it's too dangerous. While Charles begins talking to himself, the group discusses how they learned about this place. Supposedly it was a random sweepstake that came with a receipt at the pharmacy, but they're now realizing they were specifically chosen because of their illnesses. Since the passports are in their rooms and they sent a special car to pick them up, they can make it look like the families never left their homes. Later, Maddox has a private talk with Priska, wondering if she had been planning to leave Guy. Priska confirms she had and that she had an affair when she learned about the tumor because she got scared. Maddox can't believe what she's hearing and needs some time alone, so she gets in the water to distract herself. At that moment something bumps against her and she screams when she finds Jaron's body. Patricia cries for her husband as the others realize Brendan had been telling the truth, he never hurt his companion. After a certain distance, the sea probably works the same way the cavern does and Jaron drowned when he passed out. Meanwhile Kara can't stop holding her dead baby while she laments all the cool high school experiences they've missed. Trent finally decides to take the baby from her and do a proper burial, but Kara takes advantage of his distraction to start climbing up the rock wall. Unfortunately this area also works like the cavern, meaning Kara passes out and falls to her death. Trent has another breakdown and Guy has to pull him away from the body, pointing out they should all stay together from now on. Patricia finds some floating noodles and ties them together to check if she can use them to float away. Before she can try though, she begins having another epileptic seizure. Charles is lost in his own mind and there's nobody else with medical knowledge to help, so sadly Patricia dies next. At that moment, Guy realizes his vision is getting blurry, and Priska can't hear from one ear. Crystal hasn't consumed any calcium in a while and her body is starting to deform, so she decides to stay hidden from everyone else. Trent and Maddox start a fire for their parents since old age makes them feel chilly all the time. Guy confesses to Priska he knew about her affair because he saw her text messages, and Priska apologizes as she confesses the place she wants to be at right now is Guy's side. Guy admits that he wants to stay with her too. Trent and Maddox go looking for more things to throw into the fire and find a notebook in the sand mound. The owner of the notebook was taking notes about what was going on and mentioned something about magnetism affecting their cells. Trent wonders if they could hide inside a metal tube to stop the transformation, like the metal vests they use during X-rays, but they have nothing to test that theory with. The notebook also has all the names and addresses of the beach's last victims. Then Trent sees the lights on the hills again and finally realizes they're cameras, meaning someone is recording them. Meanwhile Charles finally loses it and comes to attack Guy and Priska with the knife. The couple tries to protect each other, but since the cuts close themselves, Charles just keeps going. Priska runs to her kids and sends them to hide before she grabs a rusted knife that she uses to stab Charles. The cut closes, but the infection begins to spread incredibly fast and Charles dies. Maddox and Trent hide among the rocks and come across Crystal, whose hypocalcemia has completely deformed her body. She's having a terrible breakdown and starts throwing things at the kids to scare them away, but suddenly her body begins squirming in pain and she dies as well. The Kappas reunite and have a soft moment together by the fire. Guy and Priska are elderly by now, and Guy's having memory problems. He's forgotten what they had been fighting about and why they wanted to leave this beach because he thinks it's beautiful. Then Guy confesses he's also forgotten the word for his feelings for Priska, and as he rests his head on her shoulder, he dies of old age. Priska tries to walk away from the body to grieve, only to immediately die as well. The next morning, Maddox and Trent are middle-aged adults, and they think they may only have around 13 hours left. They agree they should attempt to escape one more time, but first, they're going to make some sandcastles as a last memory. As they play, they ponder if they have childhood wonder because they grew up so fast or if this is something all adults are hiding. Trent suddenly remembers he had a message from Idlib that he never decoded, so he decides to do it now. To his shock, the message is actually a clue that says my uncle doesn't like the coral. The siblings wonder if the coral can protect them from the effects of the beach like the tube they thought about and decide to try swimming under it after Trent picks something up. The first few minutes of swimming go swiftly, but suddenly Maddox's clothes get stuck on the coral and they don't know how to get her out. All this is being watched from the hills by the driver, who is the person behind the lights. After the siblings fail to come out, he assumes they're dead and let his boss know before returning to a lab hidden in the woods. At that moment the leader shows up and turns out to be the manager, who asks for a minute of silence for the latest deaths. It turns out the resort invites sick people to stay so they can be used in experiments, and Madrid receives them with those special drinks because they have experimental medicine in them. This lab uses the effects of the beach to develop medicine trials that usually would take a lifetime. Today they've found a cure for epilepsy, proven by the fact Patricia went 16 years without a seizure. This lab is also in charge of wiping all the electronics left by the dead visitors to avoid being found. Afterward the manager returns to the resort to receive his new victims, and he takes the time to remind Idlib he must ask which children he's allowed to play with. At that moment, a mysterious figure approaches Greg to give him a notebook in a bag. The newcomers arrive at the resort and when Madrid is about to hand them the drinks, someone bumps into her and makes her spill everything. While Greg calls his station and confirms every name on the notebook is a missing person, it's revealed that Maddox and Trent did manage to escape the coral by breaking the piece that got stuck on Priska's clothes and breathing through the holes in the roof. They found fish as soon as they came out on the other side, confirming that was a safe part of the sea. Trent shows Idlib the coded message, and Idlib has to touch his face to believe this is his dear friend. Moments later, Greg is taking the siblings away in a helicopter as he explains his team is arresting everyone involved. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.